this whole thing about flipping, they call it. I know all about flipping. For 30, 40 years, I've been watching flippers. Everything's wonderful, and then they get 10 years in jail, and they flip on whoever the next highest one is, or as high as you can go. It almost ought to be outlawed. It's not fair.
Never gets old. Why has he been watching them for years? And he was the president when he said that. He wants to outlaw government cooperation. Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in New York. In comments like those that sound more like they'd come from a movie character in The Godfather or something less than The Godfather, rather than, at the time, the sitting president of the United States, Trump making clear his feelings on individuals who cooperate with the government to save themselves from serving prison time or to lower their sentences. Those remarks at the time he was president, they were about his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, when Cohen pleaded guilty to his role in that hush money scheme. Of course, he was making payments on behalf of Donald Trump, but those comments apply very fittingly today as a brand new, fantastic piece of analysis in Politico takes a close look at some of Trump's current co-defendants who are beginning to turn against him in the multiple criminal cases he faces. Politico writes this, quote, in court documents and hearings, lawyers for people in Trump's orbit, both high-level advisors and lesser-known associates, are starting to reveal glimmers of a tried-and-true strategy in cases with many defendants. Portray yourself as a hapless pawn while piling blame on the apparent kingpin. It's not uncommon for co-defendants facing serious prison time to point fingers at each other to make themselves look less culpable to an eventual jury. But rarely has it played out in such an extraordinary fashion, where the alleged ringleader is a former president. So far, we've seen it play out in the classified documents case, where an IT manager at Mar-a-Lago recanted previous false statements and gave prosecutors brand new information after switching lawyers. He went on to implicate Donald Trump and the other co-defendants in that effort to delete the security camera footage at Mar-a-Lago. In the Fulton County racketeering case, 3 individuals who acted as fake Trump electors for Georgia after the 2020 election there, David Schaefer, Kathy Latham, and Sean Still, all said they were acting at the former president's direction. They said so in legal filings as they attempt to move their cases to federal court. Former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows also making that attempt to move his case to federal court. And last week in testimony before a Georgia judge, he said he did things relating to the fake elector scheme because Trump wanted him to. Meanwhile, all of the Georgia defendants are on the same page when it comes to their appearances, or should we say lack thereof, for their arraignments tomorrow. Each of the 19 charged in the indictment have pleaded not guilty and waived their rights to be present at their respective arraignments. That is where we start the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Former top Justice Department official, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissmann is back with us. Plus, senior reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Tamar Hallerman is here, and Politico national correspondent Betsy Woodruff-Swan is here. Betsy, we started with Politico's great analysis today. Take us through what you guys are detecting.
What this captures is a theme that's just becoming harder and harder to ignore as so many criminal cases against the former president and his associates are advancing forward. And as there are more and more hearings, filings, public-facing conversations, while people realize that the jeopardy that they themselves are in is not about to go away. And a lot of this just frankly comes back to human nature. People don't want to be in trouble. They don't want to be convicted of crimes. They don't want to spend time in prison. And when that possibility goes from hypothetical to extremely real, it shapes and changes the ways that they behave. It also makes them suddenly much more comfortable, much more amenable to going after people who previously they had claimed to be entirely and unbreakably loyal to. And of course, as you noted, the most dramatic example yet that we've seen of that is Mark Meadows himself taking the stand at that hearing in Georgia, just an essential moment in terms of the way that Trump's former allies are lining up more and more to criticize him and to blame them to try to get themselves out of legal jeopardy.
I mean, Andrew Weissmann, I guess it may be a good defense. It also has always been apparent that that was the truth. I mean, that it all came from Trump. Trump was the one working the phone. It was the middle of COVID, and I remember him tweeting at state legislators to come down to the White House so he could work them over about their fake slates of electors. I mean, he's always had his hands on the steering wheel of the coup. And I guess my question is, what is the strategy as a prosecutor in the room with some of these defendants? I mean, the truth is, and they must know it, he could have pardoned all of them. And there were 15 days between January 6th and when he left. He pardoned none of them. He pardoned all the colluders and none of the coup plotters. What do you say to these guys?
Yeah, so there's no question that this was done for him and at his behest. There would have been no reason to do it for him without his being involved and knowing about it. So this is something that they did sort of at his bidding and for him. Obviously, each defendant had their own personal interests as to why they capitulated. And you're correct, Nicole, that if you're a prosecutor, you play that up, that he was the head of the conspiracy and that he's perfectly willing to let them hang out and dry as the people holding the bag. Remember, if Donald Trump were to be elected again, there's a very good chance that the state case would be paused as to him, to Donald Trump, but not as to everyone else. So if you're a prosecutor, what you were saying to those 18 people, it's now or never. If you are looking to actually cooperate, not just point the finger in filings, but to actually be a cooperating witness in order to lower your sentence upon conviction so that you don't go to jail, this is the time to do it. But I would note, with respect to the really great reporting, it's important to separate out what lawyers are doing in court filings in order to distance themselves from being tried with Donald Trump, because nobody wants to be at a trial with Donald Trump as a defendant. There's a difference between that and actually cooperating, as was done, as you mentioned, in the Mar-a-Lago case with respect to the IT person who was actually cooperating and going to be a witness at trial. So there's still that gap. But as Betsy points out, we're getting closer to people getting sort of inching their way toward that trajectory from distancing themselves from Donald Trump to actually being a cooperator for the government.
Tamar, it is my sense from here, and please correct me if I have this wrong, that District Attorney Fani Willis was entirely prepared for all these efforts from these individuals to move their cases from state court to federal court. Just tell me what her plans are and how. I mean, it doesn't appear that there are any bumps in the road or surprises on the legal front, but just take us through what the coming days and weeks look like in terms of the case she's prepared to bring for those asking for a speedy trial.
Sure. So right now, all of the 19 defendants are still together. It's looking like Ken Chesebro, who was involved in the alternate elector plot, he demanded a speedy trial, and that has been set for October 23rd here in Fulton County. That could change dramatically depending on this federal removal push from Mark Meadows, because it is entirely possible that if one defendant gets removed to federal court, they all get removed. So there's a big question mark around that. And just today, we saw a new a new court order from Judge Scott McAfee, the Fulton County judge in charge of matters, at least for the time being. And he asked the state to kind of lay out their timeline in terms of how long they think a potential trial could take, how many witnesses and exhibits they're expecting to present. And what's clear in that new order today is that the judge is still open to trying all 19 defendants together, just as DA Willis has asked for. So it's interesting that that's not off the table, despite motions from Ken Chesebro and others to sever themselves from the other defendants. And we'll just have to wait and see how these various judges rule in these coming days, especially Judge Jones with the Mark Meadows case. Tomorrow, we were supposed to see arraignments for all 19 defendants. All 19 have waived their rights to that, as you mentioned, Nicole, and all have pleaded not guilty. So we'll hear more from the DA's office tomorrow as Judge McAfee takes on the motion to sever, and from him and Sidney Powell.